My name is Iris Bennett, and I'm 28. If you spend 28 years watching your parents orbit your older sister like she's the sun and you're lunar debris, you develop a weather sense for disappointment. You smell a storm coming before the clouds even gather. Still, even I wasn't prepared for the phone call that landed on my birthday. Another candle blown out by someone else's wish. "Sweetheart, we need to talk," Mom said in her conflict management voice, half kindergarten teacher, half hostage negotiator. I was in my studio apartment in Portland, eating day-old pad thai straight from the carton, because that's what hustle looks like when you freelance. Aluminum forks and hopeful invoices. "What's up, Mom?" "Well," she began too brightly, "your father and I have decided to help Taylor with a down payment." I waited for the rest. There wasn't any. "That's great for Taylor," I said, tasting the sesame oil and the familiar after-flavor of being an afterthought. "We're giving her $100,000, Mom added, like she was unveiling a charity gala donation. The number clanged in my skull. I almost dropped the noodles. Tragic, because that was lunch and dinner. 100, wow! I aimed for neutral and missed. And for me, you're giving silence. The dissertation kind, peer-reviewed silence that concludes, "You'll understand." Mom filled it with soft words anyway. "Iris, you're in a different place. You made different choices. Taylor has a stable career, a serious relationship, a plan. You're still finding yourself." I glanced around my 400 square foot journey. Peeling paint, one brave plant, and a radiator that only worked when the moon was in Leo. Right, finding myself. "You've always been so independent," she said sweetly. That's a funny way to spell neglected, but sure. Here's the thing about being the family's designated disappointment. It's death by confetti cuts. Thousands of tiny moments that flutter down and stick to your skin until you can't tell where you end and the paper ends. Taylor is 3 years older, and she arrived blonde and sunlit, the kind of baby nurses fuss over. Mom called her little sunshine. I had practical brown hair and a talent for drawing dragons with 6 elbows. Taylor played varsity soccer. I played jazz flute. Taylor dated the homecoming king. I dated color palettes and my Wacom tablet. She cruised through a state school business degree. I went to art school on loans that will probably survive me and vote in 3 elections. I tried, though. At 15, I entered a national design competition. 3 months of caffeine, tears, and vector nightmares. I won second place out of 3,000. Dad's response, "Well, at least you tried." When Taylor came in fourth at a regional soccer tourney, he bought her a MacBook and a pep talk about grit. I learned 2 things that year. Kerning matters, and so does being born golden. We reenacted functional family every Sunday over pot roast, like a theater troupe that couldn't afford new material. 3 months before the call, Taylor mentioned she and her boyfriend were house hunting. "Down payments are insane," she said, passing potatoes like meaningful props. Dad perked up. They exchanged that married people glance that contains an entire board meeting. "What if we helped?" Dad offered. Taylor said, "I couldn't," and meant please do. He smiled. "It's time we helped our daughter build her future." Singular. Mom peered at me, testing for jealousy, like checking a fever. "Iris, when you settle down..." I smiled. "I'm happy for Taylor." It sounded almost true if you were far away. So when Mom called on my birthday to officiate the $100,000 canonization, I wasn't surprised. What surprised me was the RSVP request that followed. "We're having a celebration dinner this Sunday. Taylor's closing on the house. You'll come, won't you? A celebration for her windfall on the week of my birthday." "Actually, I have plans," I lied. My plans were ice cream from the container and a spiral into Zillow listings I couldn't afford. "Oh, with who?" she asked, suddenly interested in my personal life, now that I might be useful as a placeholder at a photo op. "Friends," I said. "You know how it is." "Well, we'll miss you. Maybe a birthday dinner next week." "Sure, Mom. Next week." We both knew next week is where things go to die. After I hung up, the apartment hummed, a thin, tired electricity. 28, 400 square feet, a bank account that got nervous when I opened the app, and a family that remembered I existed in the spaces between Taylor's milestones. Something shifted. No thunderclap, no triumphant movie score, just a quiet tilt inside me. I wasn't going to beg for a seat at a table where the menu never included me. No manifesto, no dramatic text thread. I would simply stop. Stop calling. Stop volunteering myself as a reference point for Taylor's success story. Stop bleeding energy into a relationship that didn't feed me. Week 1 of silence felt like breaking a habit I didn't admit I had. I kept unlocking my phone to send Mom a meme about a raccoon stealing pizza, then locking it again. By week 2, I realized nobody had noticed. No, how are you, texts. Taylor sent a single, you good? I typed, swamped, congrats on the house, and got a thumbs up, the emoji equivalent of a head pat. Here's the secret no one tells you about stepping back from your family. The scary part isn't the missing. It's discovering what's left when the noise stops. I expected a void. Instead, I felt light, like I'd been carrying a backpack of rocks and finally shrugged it off. I also felt very broke. Freedom doesn't pay rent, and my landlord doesn't accept poetic metaphors. So I worked. Manic is one word for it. Hungry is kinder. There was this coffee roaster, Marcus, midlife crisis turned, small batch single, origin visionary, who needed branding that felt authentic but modern, rustic but clean, bold but subtle. Translation: surprise me and then do it again. On revision 17, the logo clicked into place so cleanly it felt inevitable. When I sent it at 11 p.m., Marcus called me immediately. This is it, invoice me. I had quoted $800, already a discount on my time and sanity. I looked at the lightning bolt in my rib cage and said, $12,200. A pause. Done. Also, I'm opening a second location. Full branding package, signage, menus, bags, the works. $15,000. Interested? I muted my side of the call to cough out a stunned laugh. Yes, I said, trying to sound like people who have decorative fruit bowls. That one project fishtailed into 3 more. Apparently, when you stop draining yourself for scraps of parental approval, you have a terrifying amount of creative fuel. Within 6 months, my rates doubled. I moved from the shoebox to a 1-bedroom where the kitchen wasn't also the closet. I bought a couch not pre-haunted by Craigslist. At month 9, I woke up one morning, and the first emotion wasn't dread. It was a low, steady hum of okayness. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. My clients, my schedule, my small victories. I started lifting weights at a gym that smelled like rubber and redemption. Spite, I learned, is an excellent pre-workout. At month 10, I met Ethan. He was hunched over a laptop at the next table in a coffee shop, swearing softly at a Google Doc like it had wronged his ancestors. We bonded over bad Wi-Fi and worse rates. He was a copywriter with the same hustle bruises, funny in a dry way, kind in a way you only notice over time. It wasn't fireworks at first, more like the pilot light clicking on. 2 weeks later, we were orbiting each other. He didn't try to fix the parts of my family story that hurt. When I told him about the birthday call and the $100,000, he didn't rationalize it. He just said, "That's messed up, I'm sorry." I didn't know apology could feel like validation instead of condescension. A year after I stopped answering, Mom called. The screen lit up like a smoke alarm. Ethan watched me watch it ring. "Do you want to pick up?" he asked. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I pressed play. "Iris, honey, it's Mom. We haven't heard from you in so long. Your father and I are worried. Taylor's worried too. Please call us back. We miss you." "We miss you." The words hovered like ghosts who didn't know they'd moved out. Did I believe them? Maybe the way you miss a lamp after redecorating. An absence noted in passing, not an ache. 2 weeks later, Taylor called. "Mom's freaking out," she said. "Just call her." "I'm still mad," I said. "Is this about the house thing? I told them they should have helped you too. You took the money. What was I supposed to do? Turn down $100,000 on principal?" My jaw flexed, then relaxed. A fair point. Fair points felt like splinters. After we hung up, Ethan found me staring at the muted phone. "You don't have to call," he said gently. "Boundaries aren't cruelty. They're instructions." I nodded. Somewhere, something in me had already turned in a new direction. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to build a life that no one could mistake for a hand-me-down. And the first time Taylor saw it, she would pull over, call our father, and say, "You need to see this right now." Silence is not empty. It's a room where your thoughts finally have chairs. After the birthday call, mine sat down and got organized. The first thing they did was make a list. Item 1, work. Item 2, sleep. Item 3, no proving anything to anyone who's not looking. So I worked. The morning after saying nothing to my mother, I opened Illustrator and picked a fight with a logo until it confessed what it wanted to be. I wrote invoices with a steady hand and sent them without apology. I answered emails before noon and did not narrate my self-worth to people who measured value in square footage and wedding registries. Marcus, the coffee roaster with a voice like a vinyl record and hands permanently dusted with beans, was my turning point. He wanted the impossible. Authentic but modern, rustic but clean, bold but subtle. On revision 17, the mark landed. 2 angled strokes nested in negative space, a shape that looked like steam and a mountain at the same time. When I sent it at 11:03 p.m., Marcus called right back. "This is it," he said. "Invoice me." I quoted 800. "You underquoted." "I know." The little lightning rod in my ribcage flickered. "It's 1,200. He didn't even sigh. "Done. Also, second shop next year. Full brand package, signage, packaging, menus. 15,000. Interested?" On my kitchen counter, an old candle flickered, like it was trying to start the applause. "Yes," I said, aiming for professional and overshooting into breathless. One project became 3. 3 became a calendar that looked like a Tetris board where the pieces actually fit. Turns out when you stop burning fuel trying to get your mother to say she's proud, you can set fire to your own engine. I raised my rates without attaching an apology paragraph. Clients said yes. A few said no. I didn't die. By month 6, I doubled my income. I moved from the 4th floor shoebox, where the kitchen sink knew all my secrets, into a 1-bedroom that had a door, and when I closed it, it stayed closed. I bought a couch that didn't come with pre-installed ghost energy. I learned that groceries are less terrifying when you don't calculate price per calorie like a field medic. My mornings sharpened. Coffee, deep breath, do the most complex thing first. I stopped performing competence and simply worked. I learned that a to-do list is a kindness if you stop treating it like a shame spiral. I still checked my bank app with caution, the way you'd approach a sleeping bear, but the bear was getting smaller. I also started going to the gym. It felt like the most cliché post-family breakup move possible, but the iron didn't care about my narrative. It just wanted to be picked up. 3 sets of 10, said the trainer on YouTube, as if I hadn't spent a decade doing 3 sets of 1,000 tiny emotional lifts. Spite made a great pre-workout. So did hope, though I didn't recognize it yet. Ethan happened at month 10 on a Wednesday afternoon that smelled like espresso and rain. He was at the next table in a coffee shop, whisper cursing at a doc like it had personally betrayed him. The barista apologized for the Wi-Fi. We made the same joke at the same time and grinned like conspirators. "What do you do?" he asked, the polite dance. "Graphic design. You?" "Copywriter. I make other people's products sound like they have personalities." "Do mine," I said, too fast. He laughed. "I could, but you sound like you already do." We started co-working, the purgatory between stranger and something else, swapping links, snacks, and deadlines. He was funny in a dry, efficient way. He treated time like a resource, not a weapon. He asked questions and held the answers gently. We slid into dating not with firework explosions, but with the quiet click of a door that always should have been open. One night, the storm on my face broke, and I told him the $100,000 story. The birthday call, the Sunday dinners where I warmed the bench while Taylor warmed the spotlight. The way independent tasted like extra. "That's messed up," he said simply. "I'm sorry." He didn't defend them by default or try to explain their love to me like I didn't speak the language. He just validated the wound. It healed a millimeter. 2 weeks later, I noticed his phone light with a name I didn't know. A quick glance, a reflex. Jess. Ethan caught my eye and smiled. "Easy." "My ex," he said. "We're on civil internet terms. She still follows me. It's fine." I nodded. The word ex had a shape I'd seen before. Sharp in the dark, harmless in daylight. Still, a small part of me marked it down. In families like mine, triangles were common architecture. I promised myself we weren't building one. At month 12, my phone flashed a lighthouse I'd been avoiding. Mom. Ethan watched it ring like you watch a loaded truck reverse toward your porch. Do you want to answer? He asked. I let it go to voicemail and pressed play later when the room felt steady. Iris, honey, it's Mom. We haven't heard from you in so long. We're worried. Taylor's worried too. Please call us back. We miss you. We miss you drifted through the apartment like potpourri. Pretty, non-nutritive, bought for company. Did they miss me? Maybe the way you miss the lamp you replaced, an impression where a shape used to be. 2 weeks later, Taylor called. I answered because curiosity is a muscle I haven't learned to rest. Mom's freaking out, she said instead of hello. Taylor doesn't do small talk. She does bullet points. Can you just call her so she calms down? I'm still mad, I said. About the house, about everything. I told them they should have helped you too, she offered, like a receipt. But you know how they are. They said you're independent. She paused. What was I supposed to do? Turn down $100,000? The honest answer was maybe, but honesty would only make her defensive and me righteous. Neither of us needed that. I'm not asking you to give it back, I said. I'm asking you to see what it meant. Silence. A new one. Not peer-reviewed. Raw. I didn't know, she said finally. It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't nothing. After we hung up, I stared at my phone long enough for the screen to go black. Ethan leaned on the doorframe. You don't have to call your mom, he said. Gosh. I know. You also don't have to never call her. I know. Then what do you want? I hated that question because it sounded simple and lived like calculus. I want to stop being the villain in a story I didn't write, I said. I want to not owe anybody the soft version of myself. He crossed the room and took my hand, that easy, unshowy way of his. Then write a different story. I did. Quietly. I raised my rates again and didn't add emoji to soften the number. I turned down 2 projects that smelled like chaos. I redesigned a bakery's entire brand for a fee that made my old self blush. I went to bed before midnight and woke up with fewer ghosts. I saved money like a squirrel who'd read the Farmer's Almanac and knew exactly how long winter would be. By month 18, a thought arrived that terrified me with its audacity. Property. Not a house hunting spreadsheet and panicked Saturday open houses. Not Taylor's model home starter kit purchased by committee. Just land. A place to plant a flag and not ask permission. I scrolled listings at midnight, getting good at translating realtor dialect. Cozy meant cramped. Needs TLC meant bring a priest. As is meant run. The idea kept tapping my shoulder. It wasn't loud. It was stubborn. I started putting aside a little extra every invoice. I bought fewer takeout dumplings and more 2x4s in my head. I sketched cabins on napkins like a 12-year-old planning her treehouse. On a Saturday in late spring, the sky opened in that particular Pacific Northwest manner. Bruised purple 1 minute, hallelujah. Sunlight the next, and Ethan said, let's get out of here. Trees taller than our problems. We drove east toward the Columbia River Gorge, windows cracked, playlists alternating between his moody indie and my shameless pop. On the trail, the air tasted like rain and cedar. I felt something unclench that had been gripping my lungs since childhood. At the overlook, a hawk strafed the wind like it owned a deed to the horizon. I wanted that paperwork. We left late, the good kind of tired, both of us smelling like forest and granola bars. The GPS lost signal right as the road forked. Ethan unfolded a paper map from his glove compartment, which felt like finding a cassette tape in a Tesla. We took the wrong turn with full conviction. The asphalt degraded to suggestion. Blackberry brambles flashed by like barbed wire made of sweetness. I think we're lost, Ethan said. We're adventuring, I said, because optimism costs less than gas. We rounded a bend, tires crunching gravel, and the world shifted. On the right, tucked behind a curtain of green and the wild geometry of brambles, a hand-painted sign leaned at a tired angle. For sale. Past it, 5 acres of overgrown possibility. I saw the flicker before I knew the match had been struck. Pull over, I said. Iris, this is horror movie staging, he protested lightly. No service, no witnesses, a sign painted by someone named probably Frank. I like Franks, I said, already unbuckling. The makeshift driveway was more rumor than road. The property opened like a held breath. Fir trees, like cathedral columns. A small creek somewhere, narrating softly to itself. Silence, full of living. My heart did a thing I don't have verbs for. Ethan came up beside me, hands in pockets, cautious. You're serious? I don't know, I said, voice low, like I might scare the chance away. Maybe. We stood there a long minute while light dappled, and somewhere a bird wrote a thesis on joy. I lifted my phone and snapped the sign with its faded number, as if I could steal this moment by framing it. You want this? Ethan said. It wasn't a question so much as a gentle dare. It probably costs what my parents gave Taylor, I said. The words should have soured the air. They didn't. They just clarified it. Then let's find out. We got back in the car. The GPS blinked alive like it had changed its mind about us. I saved the photo. The number waited in my phone like a seed. That night, sleep came in choppy waves. Land dreamt me back, as a line, a shape, a promise. I woke with the number in my head. I dialed in the morning. The man who answered sounded like he had been smoking gravel since the 60s. Yeah, he said, voice deep, scratchy, blunt. Hi, I'm calling about the property. The one with the hand-painted sign out near the gorge? A pause, then. You saw it, huh? That's mine. Been in the family since '58. Name's Frank. Frank, of course. I shifted the phone to my other ear, pacing my apartment. What are you asking for it? 45,000? I squeaked, louder than intended. That's the number. Raw land. No utilities. Needs well. Septic. Power. Driveway's half gone. But land is good. Solid trees. Creek in the back. 45. 45. I had saved 32. Every invoice, every skipped brunch, every secondhand coat instead of new. 32 was a mountain to me, but compared to 45, it might as well have been 32 cents. Would you take 30? I asked, half expecting him to laugh, hang up, and report me to some land dreamer blacklist. Frank chuckled, not unkind. I'm asking 45 because that's what I need. Property taxes, medical bills, can't go lower. I swallowed the hope that had been rising like helium. Fair enough. Thanks for your time. But when I hung up, the image of the land didn't vanish. If anything, it sharpened. Creek flashing like silver thread, firs standing like witnesses. It haunted me. That night, Ethan came over, balancing Thai takeout and 2 sodas. He caught me staring at the photo of the hand-painted sign like it was a newborn. You called, didn't you? He asked. 45, I said, like the number itself was a crime. He set down the bag. And you have 32, which is incredible, by the way, he said gently. You built that out of nothing but your work. Don't shrug at it. I can't afford it. I pushed the noodles around. It's 12,000 short. That's not a gap I can freelance logo my way across overnight. Ethan ate in silence for a moment, watching me spiral. Then softly, what if I helped? I froze, fork midair. Ethan, no. Why not? Because it's your money. And we've been together, 7 months? You can't just... Can't I? His tone was steady, calm. I've got about 8 saved. We could go in together, make it legal. Contracts, percentages, all of that. 60-40 split, whatever reflects what we each put in. The air tightened. My chest fought between wanting and warning. What if we don't last? I whispered. He didn't flinch. Then we figure it out like adults. Buy each other out, or sell, and split. But Iris... He leaned in, eyes sure. You've spent your whole life holding back because you were afraid of what your family would say, or wouldn't say. Are you really going to let fear stop you from something you actually want? I stared at him. He wasn't wrong. But wasn't this too big? Too risky? And yet, the image of that land wouldn't leave me. We called Frank the next morning. I offered 40. He said he'd think about it. 3 days stretched like 3 years. I barely slept, checking my email like Frank would suddenly decide at 3 a.m., and message me, sure, kid, it's yours. On the 3rd evening, my phone finally buzzed. All right, Frank said, 40, but you cover closing costs. My knees buckled. Deal. The paperwork was both anticlimactic and monumental. Pages stacked like towers, signatures turning my hand into a claw. Ethan and I hired a lawyer to draft our agreement. 60% mine, 40% his. If we split, one buys out the other, or we sell. Romantic? Not exactly. Necessary? Absolutely. 2 months later, I was standing in a small office while Frank slid the deed across the table. It's yours now, he said. Don't waste it. I held the paper with trembling fingers. Mine. He grinned and handed me the crooked old for sale sign as a souvenir. You earned it. Ethan squeezed my hand so hard it hurt, and I didn't care. We drove out the following weekend. The land looked exactly the same and completely different, because now it was mine, or mostly mine, but enough to claim. Blackberry thickets clawed at our jeans as we hauled trash bags of old tires and rusted cans. Every bruise, every scratch felt like currency I was paying toward ownership. We cleared brush until our backs screamed, then collapsed on the hood of Ethan's car. The sky above was stitched with stars. The creek whispered. "This is insane," I said, laughing through exhaustion. "Yeah," Ethan said, "but it's our insane." And for the first time, the word ours didn't scare me. I started sketching plans. At first, little doodles on napkins, boxy shapes with pitched roofs, nothing special. But they grew into blueprints of possibility, a small cabin, a loft bedroom, a place where silence wouldn't mean absence, but peace. When I told one of my design clients about it, James, a young architect, his eyes lit up. "What if we make it a showcase?" he said. "You do my branding and trade. I'll design you a sustainable, efficient home we can document for both portfolios." The idea was intoxicating. Not a McMansion, not a parental handout, just 600 square feet of rebellion, crafted by my own hands. That night, I lay awake with pencil smudges on my fingers and a vision in my chest, a cabin rising from soil that never cared about golden children or forgotten birthdays, a home born of stubbornness and spite, and, maybe, hope. I didn't know it yet, but building that cabin would change everything. And when my family finally saw it, their voices would crack in ways I had waited my whole life to hear. The land didn't welcome us. It dared us. Blackberry vines bit into our legs as we hauled out rusted cans and splintered wood, the creek muttering like it was unimpressed with our ambition. Every Saturday, Ethan and I drove out, armed with gloves, borrowed tools, and an optimism that smelled faintly of bug spray. The first month was just cleanup, trash bags, scratches, blisters, sweat. But each cleared patch was proof. The property was no longer a dream. It was bending, slowly, to our hands. I showed my doodled sketches to James, the architect client I'd designed a brand for. He flipped through them like a magician riffling cards, then stopped. "What if this wasn't just your project?" he said, eyes gleaming. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Let me design it, a showcase project. You do my branding, I'll do your house. Sustainable, efficient. We document the whole build. My firm gets publicity, you get design you couldn't afford otherwise." I hesitated. "James, I can't pay." "Not in cash," he interrupted. "In design. That's your currency." I looked down at the sketch in my lap. 4 walls and a roof, as crude as a child's drawing, and back up at him. He was serious. "Okay," I whispered. "Let's do it." We spent weeks bent over drafts and models, trading coffee for ideas. The plan? 600 square feet, loft bedroom, composting toilet, rainwater system, solar panels. It wasn't about eco-crusading, it was about survival. Running utilities out here would have bled us dry. The budget, $65,000, permits and materials included. I had 15 left after the land. Ethan put in 10. The rest came from a small construction loan at an interest rate that made me nauseous. I signed anyway. Construction started in spring. Foundation poured by professionals, framing by contractors. But everything else, everything, I insisted on learning. YouTube became my second university. 90% problem solving, 10% swearing, James told me, grinning when he found me cursing at a stubborn beam. He wasn't wrong. Ethan painted and sanded. I measured and remeasured until the tape blurred. My client Marcus showed up some Saturdays with a crew of his baristas, all too happy to trade a day's labor for pizza and beer. We worked until our muscles trembled. My hands developed calluses layered over calluses. I lost 15 pounds without trying. But slowly the cabin rose. Each weekend, new progress. Walls standing, roof sealed, windows reflecting the trees. The air smelled of sawdust and sweat and possibility. We finished by autumn. The day I screwed in the last cabinet handle, golden light poured through the windows like it had been waiting for this exact moment. I stood in the center of the room, chest tight, eyes burning. It wasn't big, it wasn't flashy, but it was mine. Well, ours. 60-40 to be exact. James came out with his camera and took photographs, sunlight slanting across the loft, the solar panels gleaming against the green. From a certain angle, the cabin looked like something that belonged in Architectural Digest, which was insane considering it had been built on weekends and stubbornness. I posted one photo online, just the cabin against the trees. Caption, "Built this, proud." By evening, It had more likes than anything I'd ever shared. By morning, a local design blog had messaged asking to feature it. By the end of the week, 3 new clients had contacted me, wanting a logo that feels like that. Validation tastes better when it's earned. But not all attention is welcome. Ethan's phone pinged one night while we sat on the porch, eating takeout by lantern light. I glanced without meaning to. Jess. His ex. She'd messaged, saw the cabin, looks amazing, proud of you. The old bruise inside me throbbed. She's still texting you? Ethan looked at me, steady. It's nothing, just her being polite. I wanted to believe him, and I did, mostly. But I also knew how thin the line was between polite and prying. He reached across the table, touched my hand. I'm here, with you, not her. I nodded. The doubt didn't vanish, but it loosened. That night, lying in the loft, I listened to the creek outside and felt something I hadn't in years. Not joy exactly, something quieter, sturdier. The ground beneath me was mine. The walls around me had grown from my sweat. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving in someone else's story. I was building my own. And sooner than I realized, that story would collide with the one I thought I'd left behind. Because my sister Taylor was about to stumble across my cabin, and nothing would be the same after that. The collision came on a Sunday of all days, the day my family still used to pretend we were whole. I was out at the property, perched on a step stool, painting the trim around the loft window. Ethan was outside splitting kindling. The steady thud of the axe like a heartbeat. The air smelled of cedar and fresh paint. Peaceful. Mine. Until tires crunched on gravel. I froze, brush mid-stroke. No one ever came down this road unless they were lost. I wiped my hands on my jeans and stepped outside. There, halfway up the makeshift driveway, stood my sister Taylor. Her car door was open, her phone pressed to her ear. She was staring at the cabin like it had sprouted from the earth just to mock her. When our eyes met, she lowered the phone. "What the hell, Iris?" she said. I walked toward her slowly, heart pounding. "Hi to you too." "This," she pointed at the cabin, voice shaking. "What is this?" "My home." She blinked. "You built this? You? How?" "With help. With work. With not waiting for someone else to hand it to me." Taylor's face went pale, then flushed. She turned back to her phone. "Dad, you need to come here, now." "No, you won't believe it until you see it." I felt the ground tilt beneath me. "Taylor, don't." But she had already hung up. 30 minutes later, the crunch of another car. A truck I knew too well. Dad climbed out, Mom right behind him. They both stopped at the sight of the cabin, mouths parted in disbelief. For a second, silence. Then Mom, "Iris, what is this?" "My property, my cabin, 5 acres, I built it." Dad stepped forward, eyes scanning the solar panels, the siding, the creek beyond. "With what money?" he asked, flat. The question sliced deeper than he knew. Not, "I'm proud of you." Not, "This is amazing." Just suspicion. "I earned it," I said. My voice shook, but I didn't break. "Every dollar, no handouts." "But we thought you were struggling," Mom whispered. "I wasn't struggling. I was working, building something without you." Taylor shifted uneasily, arms crossed. "I didn't know," she muttered. "I thought you were still in that shoebox apartment." "Of course you didn't know," I shot back. "Nobody asked." Dad's face softened in a way I'd never seen. "Susan," he said quietly to Mom, "look at this place. She did this, without us. Maybe we were wrong." Mom flinched like he'd struck her. "Don't say that. We've always supported her." I laughed, bitter. "Supported? You gave Taylor $100,000 on my birthday and told me I'd understand because I was independent. That's not support. That's erasure." The 4 of us stood in the clearing, words hanging like smoke. I took a breath. My whole life, I had bitten back, swallowed down, tried to be the understanding one. Not anymore. "You don't get to claim pride now," I said. "You don't get to show up and pretend you saw me all along. If you want to be in my life, it has to change. Boundaries, respect. No more golden child, forgotten child." Taylor's arms dropped. She looked at me, raw and unsettled. I didn't realize how much I took for granted. Dad cleared his throat. "Can we see inside?" I hesitated. Through the window, I caught Ethan's gaze. He gave the smallest nod. "Yeah," I said finally. "Come in." Inside, their footsteps echoed on the new wood floors. Mom trailed her fingers over the counters like she was touching a stranger's skin. Dad studied the loft, the solar setup, the design touches James had suggested. "This is Impressive, Dad admitted at last. His voice cracked on the word. I stood straighter. It's more than impressive. It's mine. Built without your approval. Built because you didn't believe I could. Mom opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time in years, the silence was mine, not theirs. Outside again, the sun was lowering, throwing fire through the firs. I turned to them. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be different. No more comparisons. No more excuses. And if you can't do that, then this. I gestured to the land around us, to the cabin behind me, to the life I had forged. This is where our story ends. Dad swallowed hard. That's fair. Mom's eyes glistened, but she said nothing. Taylor lingered as they turned back toward the truck. For once, she looked smaller than me. I'm sorry, she said softly. For real this time. It wasn't enough, but it was something. And as the sun dipped, I felt it. The ground had shifted. I wasn't the forgotten one anymore. I was the one they couldn't ignore. That night, after the dust of their visit had settled, Ethan and I sat on the porch steps. The lantern cast a circle of warm light around us. The creek murmured, and the cabin behind me stood like proof carved into the earth. Ethan nudged me gently. How do you feel? I stared into the trees, heart still pounding. Tired, relieved, sad, proud. All of it, like a storm that doesn't know whether to end or start again. He slipped his arm around my shoulders. You did more than build a cabin, Iris. You built your boundary. They saw it. I leaned against him, but my mind was still on my family's faces. Dad's crack of pride, Mom's stubborn silence, Taylor's apology. The next week, I received a text from Mom. Short, careful. Can we talk, just you and me? I stared at it, thumb hovering. For years, I'd have dropped everything, rushed to meet her, desperate to patch holes she had poked. Now I let it sit. Hours later, I replied, Not yet. I need time. She didn't push. That was new. Taylor showed up the following weekend, alone. She brought coffee and a box of pastries, like she was showing up to a peace summit. We sat outside on mismatched lawn chairs. She looked around at the cabin, eyes softening. I was jealous, she admitted suddenly. I blinked. Jealous? Of what? They gave you everything. She sighed, twisting the lid off her cup. Yeah, they gave me money, support, attention, but that meant I never had to build anything myself. Everything was padded. I didn't realize how heavy that padding was until I saw this place. You made this out of nothing, Iris. I just signed papers. Her words weren't a full confession, but they pierced deeper than any defense. Do you want to change that? I asked quietly. She met my eyes. Yeah, I think I do. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was the first plank of a bridge. 2 weeks later, Dad came alone. He walked the property slowly, as if memorizing it. At the porch, he finally spoke. I judged you wrong, he said. All those years, I thought independence meant you didn't need us. But maybe we just didn't bother to look. That's on me. I swallowed hard. It wasn't an apology wrapped in excuses. It was simple, raw, real. Thank you, I said. Then, steady. If you want to be in my life, Dad, it has to be different. Boundaries. Respect. Ask me about me, not about Taylor. Stop measuring my worth against hers. He nodded. That's fair. His voice cracked on the word, and for the first time, I believed him. Mom was the hardest. She resisted, bristled. She sent long messages about how we always loved you, even if it didn't look like it. I answered with truth, not venom. Love without recognition feels like absence. Weeks passed. Slowly, she softened. When she finally came, she didn't bring defenses. She brought a photo album from when I was 7, the dragon drawing I had made, taped proudly to the fridge. I forgot this, she whispered, eyes wet. But you didn't. For the first time in decades, I hugged her without armor. We didn't become a perfect family. Perfection was never the point, but the rules had changed, and this time, I was the one writing them. No comparisons, no money strings. If they wanted to be here, they came as equals, not as judges. And slowly, carefully, they accepted. One evening, months later, Ethan and I sat on the porch watching the last light fade. The cabin glowed behind us, our fingerprints pressed into every board. Do you regret letting them back in? He asked. I shook my head. Not as long as they play by the rules. And if they don't, I gestured toward the trees, the land, the life I had built. I'll still have this. They can't take it from me. Ethan smiled, pulling me closer. You've already won. I let the silence stretch, filled not with absence, but with peace. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for their approval. I wasn't chasing their pride. I had built something better, my own story, my own home, my own worth. And if they wanted to be part of it, they would do so on my terms. The cabin stood quiet as the stars blinked awake. My land, my choice, my life. For once, I didn't feel like the forgotten daughter. I felt like the author,